The spellcasting system in D&D, especially prior to 4th and 5th edition, is weird. The system in those editions was called Vancian magic. It's a magic system taken from the writings of Jack Vance, a sci-fi fantasy author from the 50s through, well, the 2000s actually. But specifically, we're referring to his works from the 50s through the 80s. His Dying Earth books, which I have not read yet, so if I get something wrong, that's why, were extremely influential on early D&D. Here's how it works. Magic users don't have free reign to cast whatever magic they may be able to imagine. They have to cast specific spells. These spells have to be prepared at the beginning of the day. In the case of wizards, the spells have to be read from their tome, from their spellbook. Then, once the spell is cast, it leaves your head. And if you ever want to cast it again, you have to prepare it again by reading it again. There are also limits to how much magic can be stored in a magic user's mind. But as the caster develops in skill and power, they can start casting spells more often, and they can cast more powerful spells. In Vance's writing, spells are described as having a lot of innate power, even if they're just written on the page within the page of his books. This is also referenced in the first of the Terry Pratchett Discworld books, The Color of Magic. In that book, a spell literally jumps into Rincewind's mind the moment that he reads it, and it tries to be cast whenever he lets his guard down. He has to work harder to not cast it. But this magic system, with a few variations, appears in a lot of literature, and it's easy to see why. It provides built-in limitations for your characters. Even though the spellcaster might know magic, they can't just wave a magic wand and solve all of their problems. They're restricted not only by the magic they find, but what they're capable of learning. And in the 70s, this translated pretty well to the new media of role-playing games. Wizards are an essential part of the fantasy of D&D, and I mean that in both senses of the word. Even someone who has never played Dungeons & Dragons, has never read a fantasy novel, has never even seen a fantasy movie or TV show, knows who Merlin is. So they know what we all know. They know what a wizard should be capable of. We assume that someone with magic can handle, well, anything. And if you've got a game like D&D that is set in a world explicitly inspired by dozens of fantasy novels, all drawing on the same tropes, well, people want to play wizards. That's undoubtedly why the earliest versions of D&D included the magic user class. Originally, D&D was inspired by taking the individual troops from a war game and imagining what their solo adventures might be like. But as soon as they added the magic user, this wasn't a war game anymore. They needed a new system. People want to play as Gandalf or Saruman. But how do you have them fighting alongside the other original classes, the fighting man and the cleric? Simple. You impose limitations. And since the creators of the game had a copy of the Dying Earth on their bookshelves, it was a perfect place to start. They actually lifted some spells directly from those books, so the influence was obvious. But even within this system, power creep still caused magic users to become much more powerful than the other characters very quickly. This is a common trope in fantasy, and especially in D&D. It's called linear fighters, quadratic wizards. Because fighters only learn how to fight real good with their weapons, and wizards can change reality. We are not the same. In its best form, you can get a captivating story about someone dealing with their feelings of inadequacy, like in the Avatar: The Last Airbender episode, Sokka's Master. But in a role-playing game, you can't guarantee that same level of narrative payoff and resolution at every table. So what we had was, at best, an inelegant solution. And more than anything else, the Vancian magic system was weird. Because you forgot each spell the moment that you cast it, you had to prepare individual castings of each spell. If you wanted to cast Cure Wounds twice in the same day, you had to prepare Cure Wounds twice at each level that you wanted to cast it at the beginning of the day. You were basically rolling the dice on what your adventuring day was going to look like. Not just by which spells you were preparing, but how many of each. And because it was weird, a lot of players thought it was bad. I'm not trying to say whether or not it was good or bad, but I do think that the fantasy was trying to convey something very specific, and not everybody was on board. The system did not make sense to many, many players, who either hadn't read the Dying Earth books and seen the system in action in an exciting narrative way, or regardless of where it originated, they didn't care. They just didn't like this system. It was very common for DMs to homebrew the game and start by throwing out the Vancian magic system entirely. I couldn't tell you what they replaced it with, and I certainly can't tell you whether or not that solved the quadratic wizards problem. But eventually, 4th edition comes along, and their solution is to give everybody powers. And now everybody has the same number of options as the wizard. Everybody has abilities they can use anytime, called at-will powers, or once per fight, called encounter powers, or only once per adventuring day, daily powers. It was a big change, and it didn't go over well. A lot of people didn't like 4th edition for a lot of reasons, and this was a major one. And that's how we get to 5th edition, which refines the magic system dramatically. No longer are spells forgotten when they're cast. Your spells are still limited by your level and how many spells you can cast per day, and a lot of classes still have to memorize from a list of spells at the beginning of the day, still rolling the dice on what they think their adventuring day might look like. But instead of memorizing a specific number of castings of each spell at each individual level they want to cast it at during the day, you just learn spells, and you can cast them based on the number of spell slots you have. So let's discuss the spell slot system. Spells come in levels, 9 of them. You usually gain a new level of spell you can learn at every other level of your character, which is confusing. Those should have different names. But for example, casters who are 1st and 2nd level characters can cast 1st level spells. 3rd and 4th level characters can cast 2nd level spells. 5th and 6th can cast 3rd, and so on. Higher level spells are more powerful and more legendary. There are cantrips, which are basically 0 level spells that you can cast endlessly. These are spells that are so familiar to you and you've cast so many times that they require no mental energy from you in order to cast them, so they do not cost you a spell slot. Cantrips are simple spells. They never do any damage on a miss, they never do any damage if someone succeeds on their save, but there are still some absolutely awesome cantrips out there. The only reason the Warlock works at all is because there are some extremely awesome cantrips. As you level up, you gain more spell slots for the levels of spells that you can cast. The analogy I use for spending spell slots is like going to a vending machine with cash. The vending machine only takes 1 bill at a time, and it doesn't give you change back. First, at the beginning of the day, you stock the vending machine with the spells that you might want at some point during the day. You won't run out of stuff in the vending machine. I guess in this scenario, the vending machine is infinite? Sure. But these things don't go away when you cast them. The big question is, can you afford what you've stocked the vending machine with? At 1st level, you have a couple of $1 bills. You can buy a few $1 spells, 1st level spells, and then you're done for the day. Eventually you start bringing bigger bills, like $2 bills and $3 bills. You can start buying the more expensive stuff. $2 for invisibility, $3 for fireball, $4 for dimension door. Now, you can use your bigger bills on the cheaper spells. Sometimes you'll get back an enhanced version. If you spend a $4 bill on Cure Wounds, which is one of the $1 spells, 1st level spells, you'll get $4 worth of Cure Wounds. It's like a big old 2-liter bottle of Cure Wounds. This is such a mixed metaphor. But other times, what you spend doesn't get you anything extra in return, and you just basically overpaid for a 1st level spell. That's a tough trade, but sometimes it's the only choice you have. The spellcasting system is all about resource management, and as I said, I think it is a nice, clean system. But how does it actually work? Like, for the people living in the world? How do you visualize characters who cast higher level magic or concentrate on spells? Well, for that, I recommend you read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. If anybody comments, where is the 3rd book, I'll delete it. I'm not kidding. This is not the place for that. We don't need to do that. Everyone he knows. He's aware. I'm aware. I will close the comments if it gets too bad. I am not kidding about this. In The Name of the Wind, the first magic system we learn about is called sympathy, and it has a few requirements. One of these is called Heart of Stone, not literally. The wiki describes this as a frame of mind in which a sympathist is able to shut out the distractions of emotions and focus rational thought to the utmost. But the way the training for it is described by the main character is described as trying to think about 2 things at once. Essentially, he has to divide his mind into 2 parts, at least, in order to strengthen his will so that he can cast magic and exert that will upon the world. And while this magic system is not Vancian, it does rely on the restriction of individual stamina. But even so, this idea of separating the mind really stuck with me. I take that rationalization with me when I think about the spell slot system in D&D, because it helps me justify how characters could think about the world through the context of how many spell slots they might have in a day. Just like the lead of the book, our characters have to separate their mind into different parts. So in this scenario, when one spell slot is spent, they don't lose all of their energy for the day, just the energy they had mentally set aside for that specific spell slot. Now, this is a fun thought exercise, but thankfully, nobody in the real world has to worry about spell slots, or losing energy, or making tough choices at the beginning of the day for how the rest of their day is going to go. Right? Well, let's talk about the spoon theory. The spoon theory is a term in autoimmune disease communities. It's used by people with chronic conditions to describe the toll taken on them every day and the tough choices that have to be made. It came from a blog post by Christine Miserandino. This post was about sitting in a diner booth with her best friend and trying to explain the process of living with lupus, answering her friend's questions and having a real difficulty doing so. To explain her situation, Miserandino, I'm not going to keep doing this because it's going to be a sound nightmare, but this is what she did. Miserandino grabbed a handful of spoons, put them in her friend's hands, and said, "You have lupus." The spoons represented the energy that she started her day with. Then she asked her friend to describe her day. And as the friend described her morning routine, Miserandino would take a spoon with each activity, explaining how each one of them drained part of her energy for the day. And suddenly, this friend had to imagine budgeting their energy for the day in a way that had never occurred to them. Miserandino continued to use this analogy to help other loved ones understand her situation and her condition. And ever since the blog post about it, others have picked it up as well and carried it with them into their lives. It helps them put words into something that can be very hard to articulate. Now, I've seen some people online who are chronically ill forego the spoon theory because it's too simple, which it is. That's the point of it. It's a game with one rule, and that doesn't really leave a lot of room for nuance. But some of these people have actually found that the D&D spell slot system works better for this purpose. I suppose because different tasks require different levels of spell slots, there's more room for nuance and customization. So, what's the point of that story? Why did I share that with you? Does knowing about the spoon theory help you to become a better D&D player? No, probably not. Really, because I've seen the comparison made between the spoon theory and spell slots, it's something I think about every time the topic of spell slots comes up, and so I wanted to share it. It's a real-life example of something that often very closely mirrors the spell slot system in D&D. I don't know if that's a profound insight or anything, but at the very least, knowing about the spoon theory makes you better equipped to navigate conversations with people who have chronic conditions, and that's always a good thing. So we've talked about how D&D's approach to magic came from the writings of Jack Vance and was eventually refined into the version we know now in 5th edition. We talked about the specifics of the spell slot system and a few ways to visualize that at your table. And I shared the spoon theory, which I think might be relevant. I suppose you can let me know in the comments if you found that useful or insightful. Thank you so much for watching, and if you liked the video, please hit the like button. I have new videos every Monday and Thursday, so if you want to see those, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Liking, commenting, subscribing, and hitting the bell also all send signals to YouTube that this is a channel that people want to see more from, which helps the videos reach new people. That helps the channel a lot. You can also help the channel by sharing these videos with your friends. And you can help financially if you are so inclined by joining the Patreon. The link for that is in the description below. We also have a Discord where we can hang out and talk about D&D and actual play shows and whatever else we want to talk about. It's a lot of fun. It's a really great community. Please come hang out. We also have some people who are looking for groups and starting D&D games, so if you want to be a part of that, check out the Discord. And come check out my website, supergeekmike.com, and sign up for my newsletter. That's also a thing that I forgot to mention in many of these videos. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, play fair and have fun.